The Battle of Flodden Field, fought on 9 September 1513, stands as one of the most tragic and decisive events in Scottish history, marking both the death of a king and the destruction of a generation of Scottish nobility. The conflict arose during the wider War of the League of Cambrai, in which England, under King Henry VIII, was engaged in continental campaigns against France alongside Spain and the Holy Roman Empire, while Scotland, bound by the centuries-old Auld Alliance, was compelled to support the French. King James IV of Scotland, determined to honor his obligations to France and also motivated by a desire to assert his power over England, gathered an immense army, estimated at around 30,000 men, among the largest Scotland had ever mobilized. This force was well supplied with French artillery and long continental-style pikes, reflecting James's ambition to modernize his military. The English response was led not by Henry VIII himself, who was campaigning in France, but by the experienced Thomas Howard, Earl of Surrey, who, along with his son, mustered an army of about 20,000, composed of veterans, levies from the northern counties, and contingents of archers and billmen, the traditional backbone of English infantry warfare. At first, James positioned his army on Flodden Edge, a ridge that gave him a strong defensive advantage, and the English commanders, unable to draw him out, attempted to maneuver. However, James, perhaps driven by chivalric pride, the desire for glory, or impatience to secure a decisive victory, abandoned this favorable high ground and moved his forces onto lower, marshy terrain near Branxton. This single decision would prove fatal, for the uneven and wet ground negated the effectiveness of the long pike formations that the Scots had adopted from continental models. When the Scottish divisions advanced, their long pikes became entangled in the soft ground and lost cohesion, while the English wielded their shorter but more adaptable billhooks with devastating effect in close combat. The English archers, though less decisive than at earlier battles such as Agincourt, still contributed to breaking the Scottish advance, and the English artillery matched and eventually surpassed the Scottish guns. The fighting raged with extraordinary ferocity, and James himself, true to the knightly ideals he cherished, fought in the thick of the battle, leading his men from the front. Yet the outcome turned increasingly disastrous for the Scots. The English troops methodically pressed their advantage, cutting through the Scottish formations, and one by one the wings of James's army collapsed. The slaughter was immense. Estimates suggest that up to 10,000 Scots were killed, including a staggering portion of the nobility. King James IV was slain in the melee, becoming the last reigning monarch in the British Isles to die in battle, and with him perished many of the country's leading figures, earls, lords, abbots, and bishops alike, leaving Scotland politically decapitated. Although the English victory was strategically significant, it was not fully exploited, as Henry VIII remained occupied in France, celebrating his minor successes at Therouanne and Tournai. Nevertheless, the consequences for Scotland were profound and long-lasting. The death of King James IV ushered in the minority of his infant son James V, and the regency that followed weakened the stability of the Scottish crown. The loss of so many nobles created a power vacuum that destabilized the kingdom's political landscape, while militarily, Scotland was left unable to recover quickly from such devastation. Flodden Field thus entered the national memory not merely as a defeat, but as a catastrophe of almost biblical scale, a grim warning of the dangers of ambition, miscalculation, and over-reliance on foreign alliances. It has since been remembered in poetry, song, and folklore as one of the darkest days in Scottish history, a moment when the flower of its chivalry was cut down in a single bloody afternoon, altering the course of the nation for generations.